This is where it is. Anyway, let's pretend that I'm this great interviewer person.
That's fine.
Or let's just pretend that we're just having our normal day-to-day conversations.
Which was normal when we had it.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, we'll take a pause. Okay. Hello and welcome everyone to Alethea. Today we have our guest Colin Drake and he is going to blow our minds. So, Colin, welcome.
Yes, well, it's very nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Blow your minds. Yes, well, let's hope so. We want to end up with a state where your mind is basically completely quiet and still and understanding the nature of this moment that we're in.
Fantastic.
So, I have a process which I like people to go through, and then I like them to investigate for themselves while we're going through the process to see whether they understand what I'm talking about. And it basically starts with just investigating this moment, literally this moment of experience. So when you undertake this investigation, because you'll be the one who's undertaking it, I will just be pointing the way. Yeah. You need to start with a completely open mind, which means you need to basically not follow any preconceived concepts that you have about the nature of reality, maybe from your upbringing or your religion or whatever. You need to start with a completely... In fact, you need to start where Descartes started, which was he doubted everything. He started with not believing anything. Everything was in doubt. We might come to the stage later on where we realise that he actually came to slightly the wrong conclusions, but let's just continue. So in this moment, just in this moment, you look at this moment of experience, there are three basic classes. There are sensations, which are detected by the sense impressions. There are thoughts, including all minds, and there's the awareness of these. Now, in this moment, you just examine this moment for yourself and see if you can find anything else apart from those three things. That's sense impressions, mind stuff, and the awareness of these. Now, can you find anything else in this moment?
No.
So...
I am so sorry. That is horrible. We were going great. It's okay. We'll continue and they'll edit. I'll take my phone out of here. Phone's on silent.
Oh yes, better put my phone on. So. I've had it, thank you, darling. So, you just gonna?
We continue from start from the three sensations.
Okay, so in this moment there are thoughts, which includes all mind stuff. There are sensations. That's everything detected by the body and its sense organs. And there's the awareness of these. Now, I want you to look at this moment now and see if you can find anything else apart from those three things.
You're right.
So, okay, so now once you look at those, the thoughts and sensations, which I'm just going to use those two words for now. I'm not going to talk about minds because that includes everything. The thoughts and sensations are objects, okay? They are which are perceived. You perceive the thoughts and sensations, and the awareness is the perceiver of the thoughts and sensations. Okay? So the thoughts and sensations of themselves are always changing. They come and they go, they ebb and they flow. Whereas the awareness of those is a constant presence. Would you agree with that?
I would say so.
Right. So if the awareness is a constant presence, and the thoughts and sensations are just a flow of objects, then if you then investigate that to decide what is your real identity within that structure, within this moment, what are you? Are you mind, body, that's thoughts and sensations, or are you the perceiving presence, which is awareness itself? Just to help you with that a little bit, if you consider back since you were born to this moment, the only constant in that has been the awareness itself. the thoughts and sensations have been continually changing throughout your whole life, and they've all been perceived by this one presence. So then when you look at that and decide which are you within that, what would you say? What are you? What are you? What is your identity in that?
I would say I am the awareness.
That's right. That's never the never changing.
The one constant.
Yes, the never changing, perceiving the ever changing.
Wow, that's profound, folks. See, mind blown.
So, so now, if we've come to this conclusion that you and I, of course, because we're both the same, we're both this awareness itself, then we can actually investigate this awareness and see whether we can come to any conclusions about it. And from there, once we start this investigation, we can. Well, it's actually limitless, because what we're investigating is the infinite. It is the limitless. So we will never run out of things to discover, but you have to start somewhere.
Yes.
So if we start in this moment, now this awareness is still in that it's aware of the smallest movement of body or mind. Would you agree with that?
I would say. Although it can be difficult at times because the mind can get in the way, so you don't really notice the awareness. You just take it for granted.
Yeah, of course, which is actually that's actually the main problem. Everybody does that. The mind, they don't notice the awareness behind the mind. They don't. And in fact, that's where Descartes came to the wrong conclusion. He came to the conclusion that we are body and mind.
Yeah.
And then he decided that we are the mind. I think, therefore I am.
Yes.
He also, at some point, pointed out that every human being has innate awareness of their thoughts and sensations, but he didn't come to the conclusion that we are the innate awareness. He just...
Right.
Oh, no. Sorry, you're going to have to edit that out too.
That's okay. So we start with Descartes?
Yes, so when you look at Descartes' conclusions, actually, Descartes just decided that we are mind and body, and that there is innate awareness of both. But he concluded that we are one of the two objects, the mind, the flow of thoughts, rather than the subject, which is the innate awareness. So, it was a bit of a shame, but there we are. If he'd come to the same conclusion that you and I have come to all those years ago, the whole world might be different. In fact, it's quite possible, because what we're discussing here is very essential, actually, to our identity. And since Descartes came to that conclusion, man has thought he was the mind. But if he had then come to the conclusion then that we are the pure awareness in which the mind and body come and go, then if that had then flowed through from him from then till now, I mean, everything might have changed. Who knows?
I know. We might be living in a utopia of, heightened states of consciousness and awareness.
Yes, that's actually true. That's right. So, okay, let's going back to the original now. So we're looking at this awareness itself, and awareness is actually the stillness in which the thoughts and sensations occur, and awareness, by that definition, is always absolutely still. I mean, even in your experience, your day-to-day experience, you notice that to be aware of movements happening in a busy environment, you need to be totally still. If you're moving, you miss things. Yes. And awareness doesn't miss anything. So awareness is always absolutely still, aware of the slightest movement occurring in it. So that's the first thing. Yeah. Now, the second thing is, awareness must always, by the same token, be absolutely silent, because it's we are aware of the smallest sound, the slightest thought. So the awareness itself must be totally silent. Yeah. So if it's still and silent, that means it's always at peace, perfect peace, because stillness and silence is perfect peace. Brilliant. And because I like to, you'll find out later on, but I like to rhyme things, so I will say it's still, silent and serene. Okay. Beautiful. So awareness is still, silent and serene. It's here before anything appears. Now, when I'm talking about things in terms of our investigation of experience, by things I mean thoughts and sensations. Okay. That's all I'm talking about, because even for us, everything is a mixture of thoughts and sensations. I'm looking at you, I can see your form, I have thoughts about you. I can, you know, but my perception of you is actually just a mixture of thoughts and sensations, as our perception of everything is. That's all it is.
Yes, true.
So, yes, so awareness is here before anything appears, and then when these things appear, it sees them. It is the seer. So awareness is that which is here before things appear. Then of them, it is the seer. And then when they disappear, which thoughts and sensations always do, it's still always here, ready for the next one to appear. It's just
beautiful. How poetic is that?
Yes. So it's here before all things appear. Then of them, it is the seer.
Yes.
And then it's still always here, ready for the next ones to appear. So that's
brilliant.
So within that awareness, that means awareness itself is absolutely pure. For these things that appear and disappear within it don't taint it. They cannot taint it in any way because it is constant and a constant perceiver of these. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
So because it is not changed by them, that means it's pure. Right? It's also radiant. Now, when I say radiant, what I mean is it provides the illumination by which these thoughts and sensations can be seen or noticed. I'll give you an example of that. Perception actually requires illumination. For instance, in terms of light, you can see me because I'm illuminated by the light.
Yes.
But that's also true of sound. Sound, you hear sound relative to the silence within which it appears.
Yes.
And you could say it's illuminated in that you're able to hear it. When I'm talking about illumination, I'm not necessarily talking about physical light. I'm just talking about the quality that allows it to be perceived. Do you understand?
Ah, right.
So,
okay. Yes.
So awareness is pure and it's radiant in that it has this quality that illuminates the things that appear in it.
Yes.
And it's also pristine. When I say it's pristine, I mean that no thing that appears in it can degrade it in any way. Pristine means undegraded.
Okay.
Because it doesn't. Go on.
Then my question is, if the things, like thoughts and sensations, appear within the stillness, how can it be said that the stillness itself is not affected by the thoughts and sensations? Wouldn't one say that there would be a certain level of interaction between these two elements?
There is a certain level of interaction, but what I'm actually getting at here is that the underlying awareness in which all things appear itself is not actually changed. It stays still and silent and aware of the things that appear in it. It's a changeless presence. But it does, of course,
a changeless presence.
Yes,
that's beautiful.
But it does cause interaction because by the fact that you become aware of thoughts and sensations, which you see within this awareness, then your mind and body, especially your mind, is able to process those thoughts and sensations to produce conclusions and so on and so forth. But the actual awareness itself is this changeless presence.
Wow. Okay.
So now we have its pure, radiant and pristine, and we also, before that we said it was still, silent and serene. So you can see why the thing is about rhymes is that it's much easier to remember rhymes. They stay in the mind. It's quite incredible. So we've now got this is still, silent and serene, and pure, radiant and pristine. Okay.
Wow.
So the next thing is, it's omnipresent. It's always present. So would you agree with that? Awareness is always present in your experience.
Yes.
In fact,
for as long as you're conscious,
it's
there. Yes.
That's right.
You're aware of it.
That's true.
Yes.
And also, the very experience itself, we've already agreed, is awareness of thoughts and sensations. That's what experience is.
Yes.
Therefore, awareness is obviously omnipresent within that because it's the actual ground in which they appear. So it's omnipresent. It's omniscient. When I say omniscient, what I mean by that is that it sees all thoughts and sensations that appear in it. It sees them effortlessly and choicelessly. They just appear and are seen. So it's omnipresent in your experience, and it's omniscient of your experience. Your experience comes and goes in that, and it sees them all.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
And it's omnipotent. When I say omnipotent, what I mean by that is that the things that appear in it, because they don't change it, they have no power over it. Nothing has any power over it. So by omnipotent, I mean is that nothing can affect it. It has, and as we've actually seen, our thoughts and experiences appear in that and then disappear back into that, because that's what was present. Therefore, it has, you could argue, it has complete power over them because they have no power over it. Okay?
So it's an absolute.
Yeah, absolute. Yes,
Okay.
it's an absolute.
Yes.
It's the major component of the absolute, actually, but we'll get to that in a bit.
Ooh, I'm excited. Let's go.
So, okay, so now we have, oh yes, so, and we've already agreed that it's here before all things appear. Of them it is the seer, and then it's, when as they must, they disappear, it's still always here. Therefore, you could argue that it is that presence in which all things, about thoughts and sensations here, appear. It is that in which, appear, I've just said appear. It's that in which they arise in that. It's that in which they abide, they exist in that. It's that by which they are spied, they are seen by that. And it's that into which they subside. They go back into that.
Yeah.
So now we have.
Okay. I know.
I like to keep.
It's getting deep, folks.
I like to keep this rhyming thing going.
Yeah.
So it's that in which all things arise. Sorry, let's start again.
Yeah.
It's the still, silent, serene, pure, radiant, pristine, omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent field of awareness in which all things arise, they abide, they are spied, and they subside. So that.
Wow.
So and that's quite simple to see. We haven't had to rely on any belief systems for that. We haven't even had to make any leaps of faith to come to that. We just basically investigated and drawn conclusions from our own direct experience. Would you agree with that?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
So this is at the level of experience, okay, of our direct experience. Now, we can actually expand this to the universal, quite simply. But before we do that, I'll just define awareness itself as being consciousness when it's at rest, aware of all the things or movements that appear in it. Would you agree with that? Consciousness at rest, aware of the things that appear in it. In our case, we're talking about awareness and thoughts and sensations.
Okay, but because some might argue that consciousness is everything.
Well, we'll get into that.
Oh, this just keeps getting better.
We're just doing it by stages, you see. To start off and just say consciousness is everything is true, but it means nothing until you've actually experienced that, until you've actually realised that.
Brilliant.
You can say, well, that's the case, but that's actually in a belief system until you get there. You need to get there by investigation. It's no good. Anyway.
And you'll have to discuss with us later on the importance of these investigations, but please continue.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's true. Yeah, the importance is very important. However, okay. So if we decide that awareness, the awareness we've been discussing, is consciousness at rest, aware of the things that appear in it, all things, everything in existence is a form of energy. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
been proved. And energy, where there's energy, there is motion. Energy entails motion. So, for instance, like a rock, right, full of atoms and electrons. Even within that, it may seem absolutely still, but even within that, there are electrons dancing around the neutrons, the nucleus of the atoms. So there's motion going on there all the time. So all energy, everything in existence actually is composed of energy which itself entails motion. Now, all motion, in our own experience, and actually even at the absolute level, all motion begins in and comes from stillness.
Yeah.
It exists in a substratum of stillness. It can be seen relative to that stillness, and finally it subsides back into stillness. That's true of all motion.
Yeah.
The example I give, which is a very trite example, but from our point of view, is if you walk across a room before you start walking, before you're in motion, the room is still. There's a stillness.
Yeah.
Then you start walking within that stillness, and you notice that you're moving relative to the stillness of the room.
Yeah.
And when you finally finish the motion, you return to stillness. I mean, that's just a normal everyday example, but it's actually true at all levels. Yes. So,
Brilliant.
Okay. So now that's just a precursor to what follows. So but now the thing about awareness is it has actually been proven that it saturates the entire universe. So taking it the very smallest level, photons become entangled into pairs, and in fact the entanglement of photons is the basis of quantum computers. Actually, they use entanglement as their basic function for them to expand upon and work on. They work on entanglement.
Yeah, right.
So, and in this you get a pair of photons that are entangled in such a way that each one is aware of what's occurring for their entangled partner, irrespective of how far apart they are. So they can be a long way apart, but they are still aware of what's happening to their entangled partner.
Wow.
So that's entanglement. Electrons, for instance, now electrons normally exhibit the form of a wave, but once they are put under observation and become aware that they're being observed, they change to a particle form.
Yes.
If you want to see more on this, if you Google the double slit experiment, and it explains it very easily. It's very easy to understand. Anybody can understand it, and it's quite mind-blowing.
Oh, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
I myself watched that, that experiment, and I was blown away. Wow. Yeah. Existence is so wondrous and fascinating.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
It is. So awareness is present at the subquantum level and the quantum level, and then when you come to, say, cells, single cells, organisms, they respond to changes in their environment, and they can only do that by becoming aware of those changes. So the further up the chain you go, you can see that awareness actually saturates the whole universe. Yeah. Which,
absolutely.
And as awareness, we have already agreed it's consciousness at rest. So it is the universal aware stillness in which all motion arises, because we've said that all things arise, because all things are motion. Yes. So it's the universal aware stillness in which all things arise, in which they abide, by which they are spied, and into which they subside. Because all motion arises in stillness, abides in stillness, is spied relative to that stillness, and subsides back into stillness. So now we're actually getting to very similar conclusions to the ones we had when we were investigating experience, but we're doing it at the universal level now. Yeah. And the only thing we've had to rely on, we have had to rely on the fact that we know about entanglement and electrons and whatever, and we didn't experience those directly. We've read those from books and whatever. Yes. But so in the universal investigation, you do have to rely on some sort of scientific evidence, which we do. Yeah. So, so in the same way that in our own direct experience, awareness is pure, at the universal level, it is also pure in that no thing, which is composed of a series of fleeting movements within that, can taint it. Nothing changes it in any way. Things just come and go in that. In the same way that they do in our own awareness. Yes. Yeah. So it's pure from that point of view. It's radiant in the same way, in that it provides the illumination by which these movements in it can be seen or noticed, and it's also pristine in the same way, in that they don't degrade it in any way. So at the universal level, awareness or consciousness is pure, radiant, and pristine. It's still, by definition, it's the universal stillness in which everything arises.
Yes.
It's silent because anything that's still must be silent, because noise is vibration and thus in motion. So if something is still, it's necessarily silent.
Yes.
And therefore it's serene, still silent and serene. And we said it's very pure, radiant, and pristine, so we're getting there. It's omnipresent in that it saturates the universe. We've just said that.
Yes.
So it must be omnipresent.
Yeah.
It's omniscient by definition, because we've actually said it's the aware stillness in which all things arise. Therefore, it must be omniscient, because it's the aware stillness. So it sees everything that appears in it. And it's omnipotent in that no thing, which is a fleeting series of movements, has any power over it. Things, they just come and go in it, as all movement comes and goes in stillness.
Yes.
So now we've actually
Where does that leave us?
Well, it leaves us in exactly the same place as it was when we investigated our direct experience.
Yes.
We've reached the still, silent, serene, pure, radiant, pristine, omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent ocean of consciousness, in this case, in which all things arise, abide, are spied, and subside.
Wow.
So, can you... Now, what I'd like you to do now is to see whether you can pick any holes in there. You see, when I investigate things for myself, I'm always trying to pick holes in my own investigations, because if there are flaws in the investigation, then obviously the conclusions reached are faulty.
Yes.
So I am always looking for people to find flaws in my investigation, and I'm always looking for them myself.
That's a challenge, folks.
Well, yeah. I mean,
it's a challenge.
Please ask any questions you can. And if you can find any flaws, let me know. I'm always interested in investigating.
Yes, brilliant.
Yeah. In fact, sometimes I shouldn't. No, I won't say this on camera. But sometimes I get into a state where I will lie down for hours just poking holes into it, trying to find holes, and yet I haven't found any. So.
Oh, fantastic. Well, for now, I can't see any holes, but I'm sure.
Let me know if you find any.
I will do.
So, based on where we've reached now, we could expand this into further realms. I mean, you said, for instance, how does it affect one's own day-to-day life? So, this all relies on self-identity, where we started the whole thing. We started with awareness, thoughts and sensations, and what do you identify yourself as being within that. Now, if you identify yourself as being a separate object in a universe of separate objects, which most of us do, most of us just regard ourselves as that, then this has quite a few ramifications, all of which are negative. The first one being that you tend to build up a self-image, an image of yourself based on maybe your conditioning, your childhood, your physical presence, your mental ability, your ambitions, your occupation. I mean, there's quite a few factors, and you build up this self-image which is purely illusory. You've built this self-image because you think you are a separate object from the universe of objects. But if you realise or become identified with awareness itself, and this awareness we have agreed is universal, it's not personal, it's not separate, then there is no need to build up such as a self-image, because you are not that. You're not a separate object. You're just a manifestation of universal consciousness. And when you start living as a manifestation of the overall pure, radiant, pristine, still, silent, serene consciousness.
That sounds amazing.
I know. When you live as a manifestation of that, then you see the world in a completely different light. Because you no longer see it through the erroneous image of the small self. You're not looking You don't see it through the image of self-concern or of self-aggrandizement or of and all these small filters that we put on due to our small self, which completely change the way we see reality. Once you completely identify with awareness itself, those filters are removed, and you see the world as it is in its natural state, unfiltered by the mind. And that changes the way you live in the world quite dramatically, and it changes your approach to the world. But not only that, it's very important with regard to relationships, because if you think you're a separate object, for instance, you think I'm a separate object, and you think all other people are separate objects, and then you tend to objectify them, of course, how else you could, because you think they're objects. And we all know what happens when you start objectifying other people. I mean, immediately it leads you to a negative connotation of that other person in general, judgment, you know.
That is one of our society's banes, if you will.
That's true, and self-judgment. I mean, self-judgment comes from self-image. If you have no self-image, you don't self-judge.
Absolutely.
So it radically affects the way you see the world, but it also radically affects the way you see other people, because once you can identify with awareness, universal consciousness itself, then you see that not only are you a manifestation of that, but they are manifestations of that also. Which means that in essence, there is no separation between you and me. In essence, there's no separation. And
imagine if the entire world felt that way.
That's exactly
there
right.
There would be no conflict.
I know.
You know?
That's true. I know.
It's mind blowing
to
me.
It is mind blowing.
That something so
simple
can be so little understood.
I know.
You know?
But
and it could solve so many of our problems.
It's true. If only Descartes had got it right.
Descartes, he has something to answer
he
for.
Does. But so,
here we are. Maybe you can help us remedy this problem.
Well, you know, I mean, basically, if you come to the conclusion by investigation that you are just self-aware, awareness itself, then all you have to do is live from and as that. Now, to live from and as that, you have to stay identified with and as that. And although you may have the realization at this moment that this is what you are, so pure awareness, because you have spent so many years, some would say lifetimes, identified as a separate self, as a mind-body, this identification will continually come back in and swamp any realization that you've had. And it does all the time. You know, I mean, I've seen people...
It's unstoppable.
Well, the thing is, there is a way to stop it. It seems unstoppable. And of course, the way to stop it is to continually realize, come back to the realization that you are pure awareness. You have to continually come back to this realization. And the only way you can do that is to carry out this form of analysis, this form of investigation on a regular